In Sparta, victory was not the end of war. It was only the moment when another kind of battle began. Not on the field, not with shields, but inside the homes left behind. The Spartan world was built for warriors. From childhood, boys were trained to leave their families early. The state became their teacher. The city became their parent. A man did not belong first to his wife. He did not belong first to his children. He belonged to Sparta. And when he fell, that loyalty did not disappear with him. It turned inward, into his name, into his bloodline, into the people who still carried his identity forward. Sparta did not write long laws. It did not carve its rules into stone for display. Its system lived in behavior, in expectations, in what people were allowed to be seen doing. A household was not private. It was public property in another form. A woman in Sparta was not hidden from the world. She trained her body. She managed land. She spoke openly in public spaces. But this freedom was not independence. It was responsibility. Her role was not to serve her husband. It was to serve the future of Sparta. Every child she raised was not simply a son or a daughter. They were potential soldiers, potential mothers of soldiers, potential losses. When a Spartan warrior marched to war, the city already accepted one outcome. Either he returned with his shield, or he did not return at all. This was not a saying, it was a standard, and that standard did not end with the man who carried it. When news reached the city that a warrior had fallen, there was no public mourning like in other Greek cities, no loud grief, no open display of loss. The city watched the household instead. A wife did not cry in the streets. A mother did not collapse in the marketplace. Strength was expected to be visible. Silence was expected to be controlled. A fallen warrior was not only remembered as a man who died, he was measured. How he died mattered more than that he died. If he fell advancing, his name remained clean. If he fell retreating, his name became complicated. And that complication did not stay in records. It moved into the lives of his family. A household tied to a warrior who was believed to have failed faced something quiet. Not punishment, not exile, but distance. Neighbors became careful. Voices lowered. Invitations stopped arriving. In Sparta, honor was not announced. It was sensed. Women carried this weight in visible ways. A wife of a fallen warrior was expected to speak of him with pride, not sorrow. If her words showed weakness, the city noticed. If her posture showed shame, the city remembered. Children learned early what their father's death meant, not emotionally, socially. A boy whose father fell bravely was watched with expectation. A boy whose father's end raised questions was watched with doubt. Nothing was said directly. No one needed to say it. Sparta did not use courts to shape families. It used reputation. Land ownership played a role. Many Spartan households controlled plots of land worked by helots. When a warrior fell, his household's standing could shift, not by law, by influence. Access to support changed. Allies became selective. Marriage offers became rare. A daughter's future was tied to her father's memory. A son's training was tied to his father's example. The past became a gate. Some families adapted by becoming quieter. They spoke less in public gatherings. They avoided central spaces. They kept their lives close to home.
Others leaned into visibility. They overperformed loyalty. They praised Sparta louder than anyone else. They made sure no one questioned where they stood. This was survival, because in Sparta, to be seen as disconnected from the city was more dangerous than being poor. The city was small. Everyone knew everyone. A reputation could not disappear. It could only fade slowly. Mothers carried another burden. They raised children who belonged more to the state than to themselves. When their sons reached the age to enter training, they did not walk them to the gate with comfort. They walked them there with instruction. Be strong. Do not return weak. Do not return at all. These were not dramatic words. They were practical ones. A mother whose son returned in disgrace faced a social death, not formal, but complete. People stopped seeking her opinion, stopped acknowledging her presence. Her household became something people walked around rather than through. The wives of fallen warriors lived inside this system every day. Their clothing, their posture, their speech, everything became a signal. Strength meant belonging. Silence meant acceptance. Grief meant risk. Sparta did not need prisons for families. It did not need chains. It shaped behavior so completely that people became their own enforcers. Children grew up watching how their mothers stood in public spaces, how their names were spoken, how their doorways were treated. They learned early what kind of past they carried. This was the second battlefield of Sparta, not where bodies fell, but where legacies were decided. And every household knew it. Because in this city, a warrior's war did not end when he died. It continued in the way his family was allowed to exist.
Sparta does not speak often, but it watches constantly. A household does not need to be accused. It only needs to be noticed. The city is small. Paths cross again and again. Faces become familiar. Absence becomes visible. When a warrior does not return, the home he left behind becomes a marker, not of grief, of position. Neighbors do not gather, they observe. The street does not change direction, but movement slows near the doorway. Children passing by look, then look away. The household becomes a reference point, not written, understood. In Sparta, reputation moves faster than law. It does not need messengers. It lives in tone, in posture, in who stands where during public gatherings. A woman tied to a fallen warrior learns this quickly. Her place in conversation shifts. Her voice no longer leads, it follows. She is still heard, but she is not invited. Her presence becomes conditional, not by rule, by pattern. Markets remain open. Bread is still sold. Water is still drawn from the same wells. But small changes accumulate. A place in line disappears. A familiar greeting becomes brief. A shared joke does not return. None of this is recorded. All of it is remembered. Children feel the change before they understand it. A boy enters the training ground. The instructor watches longer than usual, not with anger, with assessment. The past of the boy is measured against his posture, his movements, his silence. If his father fell with honor, the boy carries expectation. If his father's end raised doubt, the boy carries weight. Nothing is spoken. Everything is visible. Girls experience the city differently.
They move through social spaces where futures are formed quietly. Marriage is not only family, it is alliance. A daughter's value is tied to the household she comes from. When a warrior's name weakens, so does the path ahead of her. Invitations arrive less often. Opportunities move elsewhere. The city does not announce this. It simply adjusts. Some households respond by becoming quieter. They reduce their presence in public spaces. They keep gatherings small. They avoid central roads. Their world becomes narrow, not forced, chosen. Others respond by becoming visible. They speak louder in praise of Sparta. They volunteer for communal duties. They display loyalty without being asked. This is not pride, it is protection. Land plays its role in this system. Fields worked by helots feed households, but influence controls who benefits most. A family's access to support shifts when reputation shifts. Favor slow, assistance becomes uncertain. A request that once moved quickly now waits. No refusal is given, only time. Time becomes a signal. The city does not need to punish families directly. It changes how easily they move through life. A door opens, but not fully. A path exists, but it is longer. Some families seek distance. They relocate to outer districts, to less traveled roads, to quieter spaces. They are not told to leave. They choose to step away. The center of Sparta is not just physical, it is social. To be outside it is to exist without influence. This distance becomes a form of safety, but also a form of disappearance. Children raised in these households grow up learning a different version of Sparta, not the one of celebration and victory, the one of caution and restraint. They learn when to speak and when to stay silent. They learn how to watch before they act. The city teaches them this, without teachers, without lessons, only through response. Memory remains present, not as story, as atmosphere. A fallen warrior's name is not repeated often, not erased, just left behind. The household becomes a place where the past is stored privately, not shared publicly. The city prefers clean narratives, victory, strength, unity. Complication does not fit easily into these, so it is moved away from the center, not removed, repositioned. This is how Sparta maintains its shape, not by force, by alignment. Every family learns where it stands and adjusts accordingly. This is not written in law. It does not need to be. The city itself becomes the record, and every household becomes a line inside it.
Time moves differently in Sparta. Not by seasons, by memory. A household does not forget its position. It learns to live inside it. Years pass. Children grow. Training yards fill with new faces, but the past remains present. Not as a story, as a reference. A boy who becomes a young man enters the ranks. His shield is checked. His stance is measured, not only by instructors, by the city. Expectation follows him. If his father fell with honor, the city looks for the same shape. If his father's end carried doubt, the city looks for correction. This is not spoken, it is observed. A young man feels it in the way commands are given, in how quickly trust is offered,
in how long silence lasts. Some rise inside this system. They move carefully. They follow every rule. They become examples, not because they are chosen, because they are watched. Others remain at the edge, not excluded, unadvanced. Their path becomes steady, not upward. The city does not block them, it simply does not lift them. Women carry a different form of time. Their role does not end with marriage. It continues through households, through children, through reputation. A mother teaches without words. She shows her children where to stand during public events, which families to approach, which to avoid. She teaches by movement, by distance, by silence. This is knowledge passed without being named. Some families attempt to change their position. They arrange marriages carefully. They seek alliances with stronger households. They attach themselves to names that carry weight. This is not romance, it is strategy. A marriage can move a family closer to the center or push it further away. Every connection is measured, not for affection, for stability. The city remains consistent. Training continues. Festivals occur. Victories are announced. Sparta shows the same face to everyone, but households experience different versions of it. For some, the city is open. For others, it is narrow. Paths exist, but they curve. Opportunities appear, but later. Time becomes a filter. Those who wait long enough may find their positions soften, not because the past is forgiven, but because it becomes distant. New names rise, new stories take attention, old ones fade into background. This is not restoration, it is replacement. A family's earlier standing is not returned, it is overwritten. Children grow into adults who carry a quieter version of their history. They know where they come from, but they do not announce it. They build lives that do not depend on recognition. They learn to exist without being central. This becomes normal. Sparta values this, not openly, but in practice. A person who does not demand attention does not disrupt order. The system rewards those who fit inside it, even at the edges. Some households leave entirely. They move to other cities, other regions. They seek places where their name means nothing. But even there, they carry habits shaped by Sparta. They watch before they speak. They wait before they act. They measure space before they step into it. The city stays with them, not in memory, in behavior. This is Sparta's longest reach, not its armies, not its walls, its pattern. Back in the city, life continues. A new generation marches. A new set of households stands at the center, and another set remains near the edges. No announcement is made. No record is updated. The structure holds. Time does not break it. It refines it. This is how families live inside the shadow of fallen warriors. Not in mourning, in positioning. Not in punishment, in placement. The battlefield decides the moment. The city decides the future. And every household learns to move within that space. Sparta does not turn back to look at what it leaves behind. The city moves forward. New names rise. New victories are remembered. Old stories become background. Households that once stood at the center slowly become part of the landscape, not erased, blended. This is how memory changes shape, not by being destroyed, by being replaced. A family that once carried weight learns what it means to carry space instead. They occupy streets without defining them. They attend gatherings without shaping them. Their presence becomes neutral, safe, unnoticed. For some, this is relief. For others, it is loss without ceremony. Children grow into adults who never knew the moment that placed their household where it stands. They inherit a position without inheriting the event. They do not remember a fallen warrior. They remember the way their mother stands in public. They remember the way their father lowers his voice in certain spaces. They remember which paths their family takes through the city. This becomes history, not written, lived. Sparta's strength has always been described in terms of discipline. But discipline is not only training, it is alignment. Every household learns how closely it fits the shape of the city. Those who fit easily move forward. Those who do not learn to remain still. This is not enforced by guards. It is enforced by rhythm, by repetition, by the quiet understanding of how things work. The city does not need to announce its values. They appear in who is invited, who is heard, who is followed. Time smooths the sharpest edges of judgment. A name that once carried weight becomes ordinary. A household that once stood apart becomes one of many. But the earlier shape is never fully returned. It is transformed. A memory becomes a pattern. A story becomes a habit. This is what remains after the battlefield. Not the clash of shields, not the line of fallen bodies, but the arrangement of lives that continue. Some families eventually rise again, through service, through alliances, through generations that prove themselves inside the system. But even then, the past does not disappear. It becomes a reference, a comparison, a quiet measure. Sparta remains known for its warriors, for its order, for its endurance. What is less visible are the families who learned endurance without armor, the households that practiced strength without recognition, the lives that adjusted rather than resisted. History does not often record these stories. It lists battles, it names kings, it marks victories, but it rarely notes the way a city shapes those who never held a weapon. Sparta's influence does not end at its borders. It does not end with its fall. Its design appears in other systems, in other cities, in other times. The idea that punishment does not stop with the individual, that consequence can move through families, through reputation, through opportunity. This pattern survives longer than stone, longer than walls, longer than names carved into monuments. What remains is not a law. It is a structure, a way of arranging people inside a city, a way of deciding who stands at the center and who stands just outside it. The battlefield fades, the city stays, and within it, households continue to move through the space between memory and position, between what is remembered and what is allowed to be forgotten.
Sparta does not leave ruins. It leaves arrangements. The city's strength was never only in stone. It was in how people learned where they belonged. Long after battles faded from memory, households still carried the shape of old outcomes, not as stories, as habits. A family learned how to enter a space, where to stand, when to speak, when to wait. These lessons did not come from law, they came from watching, from noticing who was followed, who was heard, who was ignored. Children grew into adults who inherited position without inheritance. They carried no documents, no records, only awareness. This became Sparta's longest shadow. Not the spear, not the shield, the pattern. Other cities rose, other systems formed, but the design remained familiar. Punishment that did not end at the individual, consequence that moved through families, reputation that shaped opportunity.
Sparta did not invent this, it refined it. The battlefield decided moments. The city decided lives. And when the city eventually faded, its method did not. It traveled through stories, through institutions, through the quiet rules that shape who stands at the center and who remains near the edge. What remains is not a name, not a victory, not a monument. It is a structure, a way of organizing people inside power. And somewhere inside that structure, families continue to live in the space left behind by those who fell. Not remembered, not erased, positioned.
Sparta does not leave ruins. It leaves arrangements. The city's strength was never only in stone. It was in behavior, in rhythm,